transcendent knowledge. That's if I heard. Once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha monks and a great gathering of the Sangha Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics, there is no birth and no cessation, there is no impurity and no purity, there is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no eye dot to up to, no mind dot to, no dot to dharmas, no mind consciousness dot to, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to, no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Note for Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the 3 times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangati Bodhisoha. Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world, with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Gala jebe nejo tamba ne ngushe duchu ngai dudo jen rupa bulama I bujin zi nisong kandro sola shatselo aga samara tashandar samara veos. Agasamara Tashanara Samara Evade Adam, Kadekate Parakati Parasangati Badiso, Baba Conjusanji Gai, Demidoji, Sabatoji, Mivotoji, Shimatoji, Dragi Vaji, Metavishi, Shetinga, so hard, here in the Dati Shivana, Miton the Bay and Don Jawana, Tumbado Jim Bozon Zadori, Tashi de John Denta de Jo. Hold on, I want to let the dog out. Here you go, come. Bye bye. Okay. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, the shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. Send forth this jewel mandala to you, precious Guru. Yedam Guru Ratna Mandala Gam Niratayami. Sanye Jadan Dani Janam La Janju Badu Dani Jazu Chi Dagi Chinye Jibe Sananje Drola Benje Zanje Jubaju. Sanye Jadan Dani Janam La Janju Badu Dani Jazu Chi Dagi Chinye Jibe Sananje Drola Benje Zanje Jubaju. Sanye Jadan Dani Jadan La Janju Badu Dani Jazu Chi Dagi Chinye Jibe Sananje Drola Benje Zanje Jubaju. So here we are again, another Sunday, right? Another week gone by of our lives. You know, we can ask ourselves, like, what did we do if we look at the way we behaved, right? In the face of the Dharma. We can look at the mirror of the Dharma and say, did we act in accordance with the ethics that are the foundation of the concentration that we want to learn about, so that we can achieve wisdom, so we can ultimately achieve the perfection of wisdom. So we have to recognize that, you know, just this gathering of knowledge alone isn't going to allow us to directly perceive things, right? There's a kind of union of this ethical behavior that kind of collides with our ability to have this concentration that we want to point at emptiness. So it's important for us to, when we look at these higher topics, recognize that the foundation of these higher topics, right, is always ethics. You know, as Nagarjuna says, really the basis of the foundation of that, everything is ethics. But in order to get to ethics, we really will want to have to be ethical, right? So that's where the Lam Rim and all of those, you know, stages that we studied for all of those years, day in and day out, or week in and week out, or month in and month out, year in and year out, however we did it. You know, we studied all of those stages of the path, which are those things which will allow us to learn how to achieve calm abiding. And then a special insight, which is a kind of appliancy and a concentration that then we can aim at emptiness, right? We can have like our wisdom of analysis and like our single pointed concentration unite somehow and have an equal portion of both, so that we can, you know, eventually, you know, see emptiness directly after we have this inferential cognition that can occur from that. So those are all a lot of big words, but the reason I'm talking about these subjects are as follows. There was a board meeting where Lobsang was very nice to participate in and help kind of guide the discussion about, you know, moving forward, what people would like to learn. Is everyone happy with the format, right? You know, I'm now giving a lot more commentary and Rinpoche is speaking very little. Is everyone okay with that? And if that is the case, people want that to keep going, then what would we keep going doing? So some suggestions were put out there that people are interested in learning the Prajnaparamita, perfection of wisdom. So Rinpoche and I have had discussions about how we could maybe do that, because the perfection of wisdom in the monastery, right, is studied at Drepung for I think 7 years, every single day, to kind of figure out what this very short poem or short, you know, outline, if you will, or I don't know what you would call it, treatise, very short text, the Abhisama Alamkara means. And this text called the Abhisama Alamkara, the ornament for clear realization by Lord Maitreya, is a text that contains the entire Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, all the meaning of all the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, and arranges it all according to 70 topics and so forth, and then shows kind of how the language of the Perfection of Wisdom unfolds into meaning. So that is studied for 7 years, every single day, and debated. And if you pick up the Abhisama Alamkara and just try to read it outright, and then you learn what the contents of it actually are, you'll be shocked, right? And then you'll get, as I did, I keep making an attempt to really get into it. And then I just find that the encoding of it, just to be so vast and so grand that I get frustrated, but then I keep going back to it because I have this little kind of obsession about it a little bit with the Perfection of Wisdom, and the Panchen Sonandrapa's general meaning of perfection was my goal to translate it, until I started running into all these, because I had found certain sections of it so appealing, right? But then I ran into a lot of this lexicon issue with the Prajnaparamita language, and then started to feel like it was such a vast sea. So why am I saying all of this? So I came to Rinpoche with knowing all of this, right, about the Perfection of Wisdom, and that in the monasteries, they don't really take the 100,000 verse or the 20,000 verse or 8,000 verse Perfection of Wisdom Sutra and start there. They start with the Abhisama Alamkara that has all of the outlines and has all of the contents of it. And you do see teachings on the 8,000 verse Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, but it's not the main thing because it's so encoded. When you read the 8,000 verse, which I recently did, trying to find those 70 topics within it without a commentary would be like it would be very hard for me. I know that, and you know, I can only speak from my side, but very hard for me. But what we can do is give a general idea of what this Perfection of Wisdom means, right? Like, what are we talking about? Obviously, there's the implicit meaning and the explicit meaning. So what are we talking about? Explicitly, it's talking about emptiness when we look at the Heart Sutra, right? But implicitly, if we look at the Perfection of Wisdom, the only one who has the Perfection of Wisdom is a Buddha. And the only way to get to the Perfection of Wisdom are the implicit teachings of the Prajnaparamita, which are the vast teachings of the pathways, the 5 paths, right? That are taught for the hearers, solitary realizers, and bodhisattvas that lead to that omniscient state, right? Which is the Perfection of Wisdom, right? Because you can't perfect other perfections without perfect wisdom. You can't have perfect generosity if you don't have perfect wisdom, but it all leads up to the ability to be a Buddha who has all of those things, right? Who has all of those perfections. So when we talk about the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, we're talking about the entire pathway, which requires emptiness, right? Method and wisdom, the method of the vast path and the bodhisattva grounds and so forth and pathways, but then the emptiness, right? The wisdom part, the 2 wings of the bird, as Chandrakirti says, to fly over the sea to the other side, to the perfection. That's what Chandrakirti says, that the golden goose needs these 2 wings of conventional and ultimate to fly over the vast ocean of samsara, they're saying, right? To get to the other side, to the perfection of wisdom. So the Perfection of Wisdom is talking about the whole path, right? To perfect wisdom. It's kind of an interesting point that's being made about it. So I am nowhere near qualified to discuss this at length, so I will not try to do so. We'll talk to Rinpoche in the future a little bit about this, but I wanted to give everybody a little bit of a taste of what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about what is this Perfection of Wisdom? Why is it called a mother? A mother gives birth to something, right? Why is it referred to as she over and over and over again? Who is she, right? And when you look at the text in the Abhisama Alamkara, you find out, and you look at Lama Tsongkhapa's Golden Rosary, you find out it is definitely not speaking of an individual. It's speaking of what gives birth to Buddha's wisdom. It's speaking of this, using it in this feminine sense as a lady, her ladyship, but it's speaking very specifically about what gives rise to a hearer, a solitary realizers, and a Buddha's realizations, like what those kind of mind pathways, if you will, maybe not a great way to put it, are that get you to those states of omniscience or cessations of those vehicles. So So what those are birthed from this perfection of wisdom, and there's other interpretations that say that it's a mother. What is the mother? It's the 100,000 verse, the 20,000 verse, and then what are the children? It's these commentaries or smaller ones. So you can look into it. It's all out there in English to study and to just go deep dive into. Lama Tsongkhapa's Golden Rosary, deep dive into it. I mean, it's all right there. Abhisama Alankara, very clear commentary right there. We also have Haribhadras. We also have the Muktamasena something. I don't say it right. We have these commentaries in English. We have the Jelsup's outline too, I think, or is it Kirtup's? Jelsup's outline of the Abhisama Alankara, which contains all of these Haribhadra and the Muktasena points. So we have all of this information if we want to do a deeper dive. But we just to understand that the perfection of wisdom, a Buddha has perfect wisdom. To get to perfect wisdom, you have to have wisdom, right? But to get to perfect wisdom, you also need method. So implicitly within these Prajnaparamita teachings are all of these various bodhisattva, here solitary realizers and bodhisattva pathways. And it's contained in this humongous corpus of different texts and commentaries and Indian commentaries and Tibetan commentaries to get us to Buddhahood, to get us to the perfection of wisdom. So we're going to try to get the 8,000 verse Perfection of Wisdom Sutra from the center. There's a specific story that Rinpoche and I have talked about that he wants to tell, he's willing to tell. And so we're going to get it from the Kangjur. I think it's auspicious to open the Kangjur at the center. Books are, I was saying to Lobsang La, this is my opinion, because I know it's also a holy object of refuge are the Kangjur and Tanjur. But I've always thought it's strange, like, let's open them. Let's see, let's read them a little. Let's get into those books. Let's like at least touch them and, go through them. And there's a big tradition of just reading them, even though you have no idea what they say. Just like there's people who read the entire Kangjur. They have no idea what it said. Or they kind of do, but there's people who like in Rinpoche's village who do this. Like they begin and they read the Kangjur. They start and they're like I'm on volume this or that. And I hear about this, so I'm really glad that maybe we're going to take it out. Who knows what we do with it, or how far we get. But I think it's really cool. So that's one thing. So that's about the Prajnaparamita for the day we're going to mention. And then the secondly is calm abiding. And Rinpoche said that he'll talk a little bit about it. So I just want to give him the opportunity to do so. It's been, quite tired lately. We've seen all of the doctors, and this week we've been to 3 specific ones to try to get to the bottom of things. And we're not finding any, specific thing, specific thing. There are many things, but we're not finding anything that's different specifically. So Rinpoche has come off a medicine that would make him tired, a heart medicine, at the advice, obviously, of a heart doctor. And we're going to see if that improves his, awakeness. But I just want to, everybody just has to be aware. I feel like it's important that people are aware real time as things progress and what's going on. There's nothing glaring. Dr. Lecce is going into retirement. Dr. Lecce's been his doctor for 20 something years, and he's retiring in March. And I said, so what's going on? I'm mentioning these 25 things. I've got notes, and how the doctors, they must love when I walk in, I'm very specific and I'm, very divisions. And he said, he's old. And Rinpoche thought that was the greatest answer he'd ever heard. He thought, he laughed, he smiled, because Rinpoche was wondering, like, a couple of what's going on, or is there something specific, and Dr. Lecce said, his diabetes is totally under control. His dialysis is, has a little tweaking to do, but, everything is in the areas that it needs to be. So we just keep doing that, right? So that's where we're at. Sorry, I interjected that into the middle of this, but, it's something that we all as students have to recognize, and I'm from my side having to, figure out how to, do this on a daily basis, how to, what's best, what's as far in terms of, how to operate as a student, Should I be pushing for transmissions? Because, or should I be letting people rest, right? So there's just got to be a delicate balance. So I just want you to all know as students that it's not an easy thing from my side to try to figure out whether to go on. This morning, we were like, there's no way we can, go on camera today, right? But then everyone doesn't have an opportunity to see Rinpoche, and Rinpoche is here with us right now. So just realize that sometimes it's, it's not a, white or black of what is the right thing. But the level of care is for me. And, every single thing that can be done is being done. There's definitely, I think that some of the Tibetan community is also starting to recognize, that it's not 20 years ago too. So, everybody comes to conclusions in their own way. But Rinpoche, the Chan, the Shene, the Death Chitudu. Yeah, the Shene Gong, the Shene the Gong, Gona, the Garian, the Ngama, the Natsu, the Lord, the Yabudu. Yeah. Okay. So Rinpoche and I discussed before we did the teaching about this quite a few times. Rinpoche said first, he just read it, he'd like to just start with in the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment. There's, kind of the point that Tisha makes about what is the object of observation. So we start and why are we doing it? So it says right here, when we get to the Tisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, it stands in number 38. It says, without the attainment of calm abiding, higher perception will not occur. Therefore, make repeated effort to accomplish calm abiding. So it's saying like, you have to have this in order to have the higher perception. So Atisha's saying, so he's making a big star, right? Like, hi, everyone. Like, you have to have calm abiding if you want to accomplish your aims. So then you say, well, go on. Well, then what is calm abiding? How do I get it? What do I focus on, right? What would, because this is assuming maybe like you kind of have an idea a little bit, because it's such a summarized text, right? So you kind of have an idea. So it says, while the conditions for calm abiding are incomplete, meditative stabilization will not be accomplished even if one meditates strenuously for thousands of years. So Rinpoche and I talked about this. What could this be referring to? Well, there's conditions that we find in Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand by Papunka Rinpoche, specific conditions, and in some of the discourses. And then we find a lot of the times in the Lam Rim 6 specific conditions, right? That allow for us to be able to achieve that. And we'll talk about that later. We can get into that with a text. There's no reason to not have a text doing that. But they're talking about, staying in a good place, right? That's agreeable, and lowering desires, and knowing what satisfaction is, and being pure, and not going here and going there, and thoroughly abandoning your desires and other things. You're really trying to put an abandonment to those. So those are what your conditions are that will allow for this calm abiding to occur. And we'll talk about that in detail, but those are what are kind of meant in there. Some of them, there's others, right? But those are some of the conditions that are necessary in order to achieve the calm abiding, according to the text. And it says, thus maintaining well the conditions mentioned in the collections of meditative stabilization chapter, place the mind on any one virtuous focal object. So what does this mean? So you can achieve calm abiding, right? You can achieve single pointed concentration by focusing on any object. You can use a stick, it says in the Lamrim. You can use the letter A, you know, you can use any object of observation to gain that skill. But if you want that skill to be a spiritually kind of charged skill, and you want it to have qualities of accumulation and so forth, then you focus on something like the Buddha, right? Or Rinpoche said even emptiness, or something that is virtuous, so that when you think of it again and again, when you bring that single object of observation to mind again and again, you're also imprinting your mind with virtue, with merit, right? And then in some cases, wisdom in some way. Could be argued, right? But in some cases, wisdom, if your object of observation of your single pointed concentration is emptiness, right? Then you're thinking of it again and again. You're not going to like get to that single point right away, right? So you see how using an object of observation, virtuous, allows you to accumulate more than a skill. Allows you to accumulate spiritual goals, spiritual qualities, or have spiritual accumulations simultaneously with that skill. That skill set. So then, Rinpoche the shine, gargiche, mipachi, then lesson. Then anything a lobsang. So Rinpoche said, again, place the mind on any one virtuous focal object. So I said, so what would we say about calm abiding? So Rinpoche had read those quotes, and then I gave a little bit of a discussion. And now I said, what would you say about single pointed concentration? Rinpoche said that we place the mind on any one virtuous object. Then the jungare, the nipachi, the gupa, the gechi, that's gechi shego, the gare. Less so. Then sen yewa gare. Sen gupa ewa gare.
Gupa.
Lesson. Then jewa. Lesson. Okay, so I asked Rinpoche what are so when we look at calm abiding, when we look at putting our mind on one virtuous object, what are some obstacles to that could occur? So when we're doing that, what's happening that's not allowing us to do that, right? Because if we, like, Alan Wallace had free will, right? We could just do it, right? So there's something that has to be cultivated, something that has to happen in order to be able to make a mipa chi, in order to have one focal object, right? So there's these two things that occur. One is excitement and one is laxity, or what's the best translation for that? Laxity or dullness, Lobsang La?
Laxity is probably better.
Sepo mepa. Okay, thank you. So we have these two. We have excitement on one side of the spectrum, and we have laxity on another side of the spectrum. And we have very coarse and subtle levels of all of these. So, right? So we have these two things that occur. What's occurring when we have excitement? So we're trying to stay on a mipa chi. We're trying to stay on one focal object, but our mind is going other places off of that object, right? So we have this object of observation, say it's a Buddha, we want to only think about, but we're thinking the Buddha, then we're thinking lunch, and then we're thinking the lamp over there, and then we're thinking, oh, the Buddha again. So when we go, oh, the Buddha again, we're reining our mind, right, away from that excitement. Like, so the more we, like with meditation, gom means familiarization. So when our mind gets excited, we recognize it if we've learned this meditation and we try to rein it back on the object. So we try to get it back to that object. We try to keep reining it back in onto that object. And there's different techniques to do that, but let's just stay there. We're just reining it back in on that object. Because this, I want to just what Rinpoche said. So he said that the excitement is the mind wandering off the object. So we want to bring it then back to that object. Laxity is on the other side of the spectrum. You have the object, right? But it's not really clear. It's like a step away from falling asleep, right? It's not very clear. It kind of just almost like it's got mist around it, right? It's supposed to be like when you're thinking of a Buddha, this big gold object that you can think of as small as you possibly could, right? And have all the clarity you possibly could of that object. Well, in this case, it's not gold and clear. It's kind of like sleepy-ish. It's dull, right? The image is, you know, if you were like, you've made smudges all over your glasses and then you were looking at something, right? If you wear glasses, right? Like that's something like that, right? You're not having a clear object, or your mind is like almost detached from it, right? You're sinking in, like you're trying, you know, like I many times have been sitting in meditation. I'm trying, and then you fall asleep, right? And it's very easy to do that if you're sinking, if you're having laxity occur, because you're close to that state. You aren't clear. So then what are you doing? You're reining it back in to get to clarity. And then again, there's advices on how to do that. Look at the moon, drink some tea. There's, you know, if you really can't rein it back in, just kind of elevate your mind a little bit. But yeah, these are the two things these are the kind of like barriers on the road that you're kind of bumping between to try to get to the middle of that road where you're able to stay on one object. And Rinpoche, the shine, the senigare. Xie Long Xie the Lagua. Okay, so when we look at the word calm abiding, right? Rinpoche and I talked about this before, so I'm just going to talk about it right now, just to get through this. So the definition of a calm abiding is a stabilization arisen from meditation conjoined with a special pliancy. Okay, so those are a lot of words, right? So it's stabilized from that arises from a special pliancy. So when we look at the word shine, we have two things going on. We have a shit, which talks about, and then we have ne. So the shit, ne, is the mind abiding on an internal object upon distraction of the outside. So abiding on one object without having distraction from the outside. So we look at an etymology, we can see that calm abiding is this mind abiding, a ne, on an internal object of observation upon the calming, xie, of the distraction of the outside. So the shiwa is the calming of the distraction. The ne is the abiding. When we look at etymology, that's something that they always do in debate texts, right? They always look at the etymology, the definition, and the divisions. And I just recently was hearing Alexander Berzin, and he doesn't really feel that without studying all of the definitions and things like that, as Westerners, we can really even read Buddhist texts because there's so many different variables of lexicon and so forth. And if you don't really know what is being honed in on through definition and through definiendum, that you're really very easy to get lost in some translator's nuance. So I like that. And he's saying, I'm one of them. You know, I'm one of them. I'm making this up. You know what I mean? And I'm making these words up. And if like you don't know, you know, what the definitions are and so forth, and what the context that I'm talking about, you could very easily misunderstand it. So it's just interesting to see why are they studying these definitions and etymology? Why does it matter if it's xie and ne and why are we looking at it in this complex detail? Because then when we look at Atisha's text, it says, place your mind on one focal virtuous object. Then we look at what Shine is, we see it's putting the mind abiding on an object without distraction, right? So placing the mind on one, that's the without distraction part. So when Atisha says place it on one, when we look at the definition or the etymology of Shine, it's that without distraction. That's meaning just that one focal object. So we'll get into maybe a little bit more of this in the future. But I wanted to just touch those two topics real quick because we're here right now and they were requested to talk about. So that's kind of some stuff we'll do in the future. I'm going to try to get to the center. I don't know when, and I have to find the index, and I don't know which edition of the Khensur we have. I was like, oh, this should be easy, and then not as much as I thought, because there's different editions. There's like I don't know, there's a few editions of the Khensur. So I have to, if we don't have the index ourselves, which I think we may, then I'll have to just find out which edition we have, and then those are all available. All those indexes are online. Columbia's done an amazing job of cataloging a lot of stuff I'm finding way deep in the internet. When you die, like next, you go through pages, you end up at one PhD, like writing a thesis, like has the whole sumbum in English translated, like in terms of like the index. It was so beautiful to see that. It was helpful for me when I've been looking for tons of text lately. So now I have that, and I can see what it's called in English, and then, oh, there's that too? Because like, I don't know, there's so many texts in the Sumbum. So now I'm like interested because I know it in English and can read and see, oh, Lama Tsongkhapa wrote about that. I had no idea. So thank you to those scholars who are way over my head, but they've helped me along this ride. I'll tell you that so much. So thank you to all who took it to that next step that I couldn't. All right, so let's talk about, are there any other things that people are interested in specifically, because those are two specific things that we are going to go into more detail about, but are interested in learning, or does anybody have any questions? Okay.
If no one else is going, I love when Rinpoche talks about the source of all my good. If that's something you want to discuss at all.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah, right.
Yuntenshi Germa. The Dondagare. Yuntenshi Germa, Dondagare. Chipo. Let's go. Hold on one sec. Rinpoche, they common. The Chan get to common. Chiwa ire. They con yuntenshi Germa, Shera Gabudu. Donda Gare. Do the Shena. The Jeepush son, the Gare.
Jeff.
Hold on one sec.
Okay.
The
maybe that could be a separate day.
Yeah. The Lauren got it. Nene, Lauren Dupa. Dupa Lama got it. Gari Ashu, the Dupa Lama. Jipo. Jipo got Geshe. Got it. Yeah, he said for me to teach. So he said, I asked him if he could give. So I asked him what the meaning of the source of all my good is. And Rinpoche said it's a summary of the Lam Rim.
Oh, wow.
So that's what Rinpoche said. He said it's a summary of the Lam Rim. And then I asked him, what would that, if you were to summarize the Lam Rim, in a few words, what would you say? And he said, for me, he
That's
said,
great.
no, then he said, well, if you look at the text, you'll know what it means.
Yeah.
And then I said, well, how would you summarize it? And then he said, for me to say it. So if we're doing note for note, word for word.
Yeah.
So the source of all my good is a summary of the Lam Rim. You can actually plug, like if you look at the outline of the Lam Rim Chemo, it's fun to actually do when you look at where you can plug all these individual parts into. And Lama Tsongkhapa takes this poem from the very beginning all the way to the end, explaining all of in an implicit way, right? All of the teachings that Buddha gave, according to the way that Atisha put them into perspective, the teachings for beings of three capacities, right? The teachings for beings of small, medium, and great capacity. So all of those teachings are contained within the Lam Rim. So therefore, all of those teachings are contained within the source of all my good. And they show how an individual would go from wherever his or her state is, standing on Earth or Mars or wherever the sentient being is standing at that moment. Their teachings to show that being from whoever they are, from wherever they are standing, how to become a Buddha. From right there, what they need to do next to become a Buddha. And that's what the stages of the path to enlightenment teachings are for. They're to show an individual how to become enlightened. And that's why we see when we look at the greatness of the teaching, the greatness of Atisha's teaching, it allows us to see that all teachings are free from contradiction, right? It allows us to see that they're all instructions for practice. And it allows us to easily understand what the Buddha is talking about, and allows us not to abandon the Dharma. And what does that mean? Well, it allows us to see that the teachings that Buddha gave, right, are for all sentient beings of all aptitudes and all dispositions, and they were all given for one of them or an individual or a group of individuals, whatever, to be able to start from where they are and then become enlightened. So that's what the greatness of the Lam Rim is. It shows all of these different capacities and explains them in kind of graduated stages and in kind of an order, so we can put the whole Buddhist framework into a very nice, understandable package and know how to practice it without leaving anything out or mistaking which pathway is before that which it gives rise to, right? Or the realization that it gives rise to. I don't know if that made sense.
That helps.
That last part may not have, but I think most of it did.
No, yeah. I didn't know that. I mean, that the source of all my good was the summary of the Lam Rim. That's awesome. And then I just had another question. So reciting mantras, I just want to develop more respect for some of the mantras, specifically Amitabha. I read that it was, I think in the prayer book it says Amitabha. Doesn't say Amitabha, it says Amitayas or something, but then I looked on the internet.
Sepame, yes.
Yeah, so it's the same, right? Same?
Amitayas, if you want to develop a relationship with Amitayas, you have one. The White Tara initiation that we do, we always have Amitayas on the crown of Tara's head, on our heads. Bowl that the nectar, right, goes from out to the directions to gather and hook various things, is Amitayas's bowl. So that's just one point that we do connect with Amitayas. So if you're doing the mantra, just realize that we do have that connection with Sanjay Sepame, the Natsu, the Kandun, the Becha, the Zonga Mambo Yure, and Sepame Zonga Yure, and the Gender Yure. Then Kon Sepame Jawa Chambo Yomare Sedu. Then Gay Sedu, the Dronkar Sewang Sepame, the Gola Tuk, Gola Chi Yure. Then Natsu Jawa Chambo Yure. Then the Lapcha Yurebe Rinpoche. Okay. I asked if he had any, I told him what I said, that you have a connection. We do this at the White Tara. It's on the head of Tara, the
Okay.
Amitabhas. Do you have, is there something more specific though?
Yeah.
You mean?
Like is it synonymous with Amitabha? I looked that up online. Is that two different Buddhas?
Two different. Sepa me
Are
and
they?
Yoba me. Yoba me.
Oh, okay.
Now, there may be a connection. I am really poor on the five. Sepa me dan Yoba me, the Sanjay Chipa. Kakare. Kakare. They're different Buddhas.
Okay.
But I literally, like, it shows you, like, you think I'm
I
like
don't
so
work for
not in
Walmart.
the dark over here, right? Like,
No.
I have a really, the
I
five
don't know.
Buddha families is a topic of mine that it gets, and Amitabhas, I don't believe is within the five Buddha families, correct? I don't believe so.
Yeah.
No, I don't believe so. So,
Okay. Yeah, so Amitabhas, and then Namgyal is the long life protector deity, correct?
correct. Nangyalma, the Seirimbi, Ha, Seirin Ha. Yes, long life deity.
Okay. Yeah, so yeah, like I said, I was just thinking about the mantra, thinking about the meaning of each Buddha, so I can kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you could imagine while you're doing the mantras, like different rays, right, out of the tree, right, in front of you. If you don't have, yeah. So you can imagine that when you have Amitabhas in the front, that light rays are going from the Hri and the bowl, right, out to sentient beings when you're doing your mantras or something like this.
Right.
Okay, yeah, you cannot do a self-generation of Amitabhas because you have white Tara. So you would do front generation of the deity in the front, or on the crown. On the crown.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff.
We have hands raised from Losangwa and Stasha.
Lobsang La.
Oh, thank you. That's a delay.
That's
I really loved the way you started to introduce the Prajna Paramita, collection of teachings and literature today. And so I would encourage you to pursue that in the classes, and whatever way you might most like to do that. But it sounded really understandable, like what you just said. So if you can somehow,
was it right?
I believe it was as far as I could tell. Yes. So I'm obviously not the ultimate authority in that regard in any means, but it seems so I would say if you can write kind of like sort of extract, not even go directly into a text, or like, but just extract the meaning. Why is it the mother? What does it mean? Why is this wisdom called the mother? What is it creating? What are its children? Go through in that way. I think it could be very helpful, or at least interesting. Probably helpful for practice. Yeah.
Thank you. That's the Dudushes on the Kon Yabudu said, the Jama, the Moa Shena Pambudu. Yeah. I called on Lobsang La first in case I said anything that was in error that he made, like, so we could keep the wrong view timeline to a minimum. Go ahead. Yeah, the Buddha families thing is something that always confuses me. I mean, I can list them, but it just confuses me a little bit, for sure.
Tashile, thank you for the teaching and for translating as always. I do have a question about the final stages without getting too specific. Is it appropriate to ask now or later? Or
about completion stage?
Yes, but it's basically, it's not specific, but I want to know, is your a person's path to Buddhahood something we achieve on our own, or eventually a second real person is needed? And if so, do they have to be on the path as well, or is this inappropriate to talk about? I'm sorry.
Rinpoche, the Jerin, Zurin, Kechishe, the Dirube, Contrewa, Zurim, the Yayong, Yengua, the Jerin, Zurin, the Zurin, the Tama, Sanje, Shanchu, Yengwana, the Yayong, Nichago, the Mena, the Sanje Dromare, then the Yom, the Nampa Yengo. I think that let's table this a little bit. The reason I say that, Rinpoche said it is necessary for the completion stage practices to real or emanated, right? Have that participation. But the qualifications of that, I don't know. I don't feel comfortable talking about personally. And the real qualifications are the practitioner that is embarking on it, right? To be able to distinguish between a qualified, in this case, we're talking consort, right? A qualified being. So first it starts with the practitioner being at a completion stage, right? So let's start there, like not real, like being able to see themselves as the deity. And Rinpoche has said in the past, and be able to fly, and be able to do all kinds of, burrow under the ground. He said if people who are ready to do that practice could do that, and like a worm. He said they could stick their hand out to a tree and grab an apple off of it without pulling it, and then throw the apple back on the tree and make it regrow. So the person that would be doing, looking for an individual or an emanation to practice with would be that kind of person, would be someone who is extremely realized. And I've even seen some commentaries who say, and I heard Geshe Lharampa Tenzin say, must be on the 10th Bodhisattva ground. So, who am I to know about completion stage practices? We're not going to be able to get the detailed commentary from Rinpoche today, I can assure you of that. He's very capable of giving it, I also assure you of that. But yeah, once the real practitioner is realized enough, and there may not even be in this world one, right? Or there could be many, but it's very, very rare. This is a very highly realized being who is very special, who can take a shortcut because of the realizations he or she has. Then they would have this level of realization and have studied into all of the different qualifications of a partner. And, when you look at the texts, there's a lot of points that are made. And if you don't have the highest yoga tantra initiation, it's not really appropriate to talk about it.
I think, thank you. I appreciate it. I understand. I
mean, that could fall into secrets of the consort. There's parts in the tantric vows that, so anyway, I'm not trying to be Mr. Secret Man. Anyone who's on, maybe everyone here has highest yoga tantra initiation. But it says in the highest yoga tantra practices that if you expose any of the secrets or points within highest yoga tantra, now the Dalai Lama, other lamas do it at a mass level. They have much higher realization than I. But when I start to talk about it, I get worried because it talks about in the initiation, Vajrasattva breaking your skull with the Vajra and killing you and never coming back to you as a deity if you talk about these points to those who are not initiated. So
I understand.
That's why I just kind of froze up a little. And that's why I want everyone on the screen to know that, it's a really high practice that you have to have the permission to practice and know the details of. And you can find those details in a lot of the commentaries on there's such a wealth of information right now that you can get about Kala Chakra and about some of the highest Yoga Tantra practices. If you go into Burzen archives, he's got an incredible wealth of information you'll find on Kala Chakra. You could read for like weeks probably, and you can find a lot of that information in there.
Thank you. I understand. I was thinking.
No, you asked. Yeah, it's
No, I feel I want to say I'm sorry. I don't want to put anybody in jeopardy. I feel like time is of the essence. And
Yeah.
with Rinpoche being my root guru, I want his advice or answers. And I think I was thinking a lot about like the consort. Once there is that union of wisdom and emptiness, that does the consort also attain enlightenment at the same time? And I think that's why I was asking if, you know,
not
that.
necessarily.
Okay.
And you have to think also, when you look at some of it's not just the female that is, the male's the consort too. It's a union. So everybody gets stuck on this, well, if they don't both, the male may not be the one getting enlightened, right? You have to abandon kind of the ordinary appearances and look to what the point of that is. And it isn't what, unless you study it, it looks like it is, right?
I understand. Thank you so much. And again,
thank you very much. Yeah.
I don't want to put anybody or anything in jeopardy, but anyway, and I'm not saying that I'm there. I was just thinking about things that I'm sorry. Thank you.
No,
Thank you,
don't
Rinpoche.
ever be sorry about asking about practices and teachings that the Dalai Lama gave us. Seriously, that's not something that you should feel that way about. And you should ask the questions. Again,
I want to preference. I'm not there. I'm not saying I even practice those things, but I feel like I want to ask certain things of Rinpoche because I know that what he tells is the pure truth. And so that's why I wanted to ask him specifically, but I will study and try to be nice.
Terry Flynn chatted in a question, and then we've got a question from Priscilla. So Terry Flynn said, some of my worthwhile insights seem to come to me from my mind's working in the background while I am thinking of something else. Is there a way in Buddhism to harness this for meditation?
So I don't know that you can have two thoughts at the same time.
Well, I'm not sure he's saying thought. He said, insights seem to come to me from my mind's working in the background. So I think he's talking just about his mind working and maybe developing. I'm reading into his question. He can certainly chat in more detail.
Yeah, can you chat in, Terry? Because you hear what my thing is, right? Like you can't hold two thoughts simo, right? There's a lot of moments in a second. So I get that that's pretty diverse amount of time to be able to have, moments of thought.
Terry,
but if you could just clarify it a little bit, that would help.
And Terry, are you talking about like neuroplasticity, like how your brain changes with different practices? And we could come back to this question. Maybe we could address Priscilla's question.
Sure, of course. Yes, Priscilla.
Hello, thank you very much. And Rinpoche, thank you so very much. You asked if we had any requests for what else we might want to experience with Rinpoche. And I don't know the details of his energy level or whatever. I'm wondering if there are any transmissions that Rinpoche thinks would be highly beneficial for us and that he would have the energy to do. So that's my request.
Okay. Rinpoche, the Priscilla, the Sompere, the Gemma, the Long Chishina, the Chan Lama Yabudu, then the Chan Nupa, Do Yana, the Chan Salo Gari Ube, the Long Gari Yabudu. London. So Rinpoche said that he'd do the Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment. I think we may have done it, but he will give a transmission of Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment.
Mhm.
So I asked him what he thought would be important. He said he'd give a transmission. He said he'd give that. So that's.
Thank you very much.
Terry chatted in. He said, I can have my mind on playing scales with guitar, what my mind is actually working on, and some random notion that is coded in language will just suddenly bubble to the surface of my consciousness, the simultaneous background work, he says.
Ale, the Chan Getru, the Dranye Dangtian, guitar. And Kon Dana, then Kon the music Dandu, then Kon Salo, Sansan Gondan Drapu. So what's the question? Is there a way to I see it. Was there a way to get to that?
Through meditation.
A
way in Buddhism to harness this for meditation.
So when you're playing the guitar, you seem like just the notes are playing and then you think of things. Is that, am I correct? Am I like you're having ability to have like kind of almost realizations by not keeping your mind so tight on the subject that you're trying to realize maybe? So like almost like your mind's loose enough to look at something because it's playing the guitar. I'm really interpreting the heck out of your question though. I'm having kind of a hard time with it. So I'm sorry about that. I don't know how to ask Rinpoche that question. And especially like he's a little tired right now. So I don't really know how to ask him that kind of a detailed question. Kon guitar dana, then kon music dana do. Yine sansan kon gonja do yamdu. Then kon sampa chichina pembudu. I don't know how, I'm not going to get to that. I don't know how to ask it. And Lobsang La, I see your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, never mind. I don't need my hand up, but what did you?
Yeah, do you hear the question?
Of course.
Is there, I know there's this idea of like, object was ascertained, seen but not ascertained, and that you can be doing something you're familiar with and still thinking because it becomes like rote, right? Like, so,
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a big question because it's about how the mind functions, and that's a big study, a topic of study. So, but I mean, I guess the simple answer, I think actually, Stephanie and I think kind of wrote a good response in the chat. Sounds like shower thoughts, insights that come when you relax doing something else. So certainly it's, if you are in the midst of some kind of ongoing study and reflection, the wisdom arisen from learning, the wisdom arisen from reflection, the wisdom arisen from meditation. So those first two are sort of ongoing, and you can do them throughout the day, throughout the week, in your daily life. You can be thinking about things, whatever you do. And so, yeah, of course, there's levels of your mind, operating that are maybe not, immediately conscious, or sort of coming in and out of conscious presence, manifest, sort of getting bubbling down and bubbling up again, simmering down and bubbling up again. So that's just part of the mind's process. So the more you consciously, intentionally engage in that study and reflection, then the more the working in the background will be going on. And
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So bodhicitta
Yeah,
works like
it.
that too. That's like when bodhicitta gets strong, it's like, it's always there. They say even if it's not conscious, like even in the mind of an Arya, meaning of someone, someone who's directly perceiving emptiness while they're in that meditation on emptiness, because the only thing appearing to their mind is emptiness itself, no conventional truths. But there still is bodhicitta somehow sort of subconsciously in their underlying, so it's working in the background, like sort of, so it's because they're so strongly familiarized. The habit is so strong. So as the more you make this habit strong through your intentional effort of bodhicitta, of understanding emptiness, then it'll work in the background, I guess.
Great answer. Great answer. Maybe a couple more questions, and I want to get Rinpoche to relax a little bit.
Well,
Get him
maybe
off
I'll
of
just
the-
mention real quick, because I just wanted to mention that the terminology for the tantric question, that you might want to double check that, because Rinpoche probably understood what you were trying to say, but that's not generally, you don't usually use the phrase yabyum to refer to the actual practice of that. Yeah, so there, you might want to just check the terms and then double check with Rinpoche if you actually asked, if you understood what you were trying to ask him.
Yeah, what's the better term?
I think they use the word chakyama. I think, but I have to double check.
I see it.
that. I was flipping through the dictionary, and when you go in the dictionary and there's a tantric term, you have literally 17 different definitions, each from a different text and a different tradition. And it's like a little bit, but maybe if you just try to explain a little bit more kind of slowly, and he can give you the right term or something. Because yabyum in general just means you have the tankas that we all see, and there's two deities and union.
Right.
That's yabyum. So that is part of that's of course going to be part of it, but it doesn't necessarily mean who are the when you're actually practicing it, what's the process there. It's so that's a different term. I think chakyama is the word. I think chakyama.
The Rinpoche, the Shachama. We'll talk after about it. I'll talk to him after about it. I don't want to get back in the weeds with that.
Karen just took down her hands, so I'm not sure if that means she doesn't have a question anymore. And Coleman, I'm not sure if you still have your hand up or if you have a
Yeah.
second.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
Karen
What's it
has
called? Can I make?
yet, and she's had her hand up for a while. So let's hear
Oh
from
yeah, for sure. Definitely.
What's up?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to say thank you for the teachings. Also, is there any way that you can direct us to a reading or a book to help us with grief? Thank you.
Help with what?
Grief.
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 In English. Doesn't His Holiness have a book out?
Yeah.
Healing,
The
sorry?
Book of Joy. The Book of Joy with Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama.
Right, no,
Maybe.
but there's one, Understanding Grief, or yeah, I'm trying to think of a specific Buddhist book. Does anybody have any suggestions? Book specifically kind of about that? A Buddhist book specifically about that? Anyone familiar with?
I mean, that Coleman's suggestion probably contains sections about that. I mean, it would probably be a nice place to look. There's an interesting book that's very kind of touching in a personal way, which is a personal account from the professor and author Guy Newland after his wife passed away, called A Buddhist Grief Observed. It's a personal account, so it might not be exactly what you're looking for, but it's very touching and has also Dharma insights for sure in it. So that might be something worth.
What was the name again of that?
I'll type it, by Guy Newland, and it's he's a really great scholar. He's a university professor, but he's one of the main emptiness, his books, many books about emptiness that are available in English, that kind of, he has a introductory books. And and someone just wrote also, I'll just say it, Advice on Dying by His Holiness the Dalai Lama.
That's it. It's in that series. Yeah.
I don't think it really goes into grief so much, but it's still an amazing book that indirectly will certainly help, yeah. So
Is that what you're holding up, Teresa?
We can't hear her.
I was muted, sorry. Yes, this is just a quick look on my bookshelf. It is about dying. It's not specifically about grief, but you might find something interesting in it. I'll look a little more too. I have quite a few books.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
I'm sorry for your pain.
Thank you.
Coleman, and then we'll do the prayers.
Sorry, I have another question for you.
Okay. Sorry, Jeff. I just wanted to clarify again. Because it says on the website, I just looked up Amitabha and Abhitayas. Ma'am, I don't work for Walmart.
Oh, you don't work for
No,
Walmart?
no.
Oh,
It says one of the 5 cosmic Buddhas of esoteric Buddhism. And it says Amitayas, the Buddha of eternal life, is also known as Amitabha.
Okay.
Yeah. So like when I'm meditating, think of either. I guess they're synonymous. It says it's synonymous. So I just want to clarify.
Yeah. What's the source on that?
Hold on. I just Googled it. It's
No, it's fine.
yeah, doesn't say.
And you know what? In the beginning of the sadhana and at the 20, maybe even 21 tars, but at least the sadhana I know about, it changes from Amitabha to Amitayas in the visualization. It starts with Amitabha. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, okay.
I saw that and I was wondering if it was a misprint. And then I read
Yeah.
it somewhere else and realized it wasn't a misprint.
Right, yeah, all right. Thanks for clarifying. I thought I'd just bring that up. So
Yeah,
appreciate
thank
it.
you. I appreciate
You're
that.
welcome. All right, man.
The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I've collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang to shine forever. I send forth the jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised the Supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness, all powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Jatsu, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, a spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tuji Rinpoche Gutsi Shabi Denonam.